Hello Gundam fans, I'm finally back from my work assignment. I've been away for 3 months. Finally got back to my workstation, and today we'll be taking a closer look at the Paasche Talon TG3F. I did the unboxing on this a couple weeks back, and today we'll be loading it up with paint and see how it performs. Stick around. Okay, so if you haven't checked out the unboxing, I recommend that you do. I'll put the link down below. You can just jump to it and scan through it so you know what comes in the package. But essentially, with the TG3F set, you get 3 tip sizes, a 0.25, which I have installed, a 0.38, and a 0.66 millimeter tip. And for the 0.66, you have the option of using this fan cap, and we'll be testing out all tip sizes. So let's begin with the 0.25, which I have right here. Also, I've installed a quick disconnect here, which I got from Badger, made for Paasche, so I can easily switch out airbrushes. This does not come with the package though. I got this separate. So let's test it out. Alright, so I have the airbrush loaded up with a bit of Mr. Color acrylic, thinned down to about 70-30 thinner to paint ratio. I also have the crown cap removed so I could get a lot closer to the work surface and get a finer line. So let's test it out. Really nice, very fine, and it offers really good control on the trigger, not too jumpy. Really fine lines, no problem at all. That's about as fine as you would ever need painting mecha in 1/4/4 scale, maybe even smaller. So really good. Yes, very nice. And I'm noticing a bit of tip dry right now, which is common with acrylic, I'd say. But yeah, just make sure you keep that under control while you work, and it should be a great detailing airbrush if you want to do camouflage patterns, things like that. Get really tight pre-shades. The 0.25 millimeter tip of the Paasche Talon should be just fine. Moving a bit farther from the paper here, can get a really good fade, and that's about I'd say a centimeter thick, but you definitely want to use this tip size for close-in work and not for doing coverage. But it's possible if you're working with smaller pieces like tabletop minis. The 0.25 would do a really good job. The paint cup is adequate, a little taller than what you'd see in other models, but yeah, does the job really well. Let's try the middle tip size, the 0.38, and see how that does. Okay, so I've swapped in the 0.38 tip combination and have the same kind of paint loaded. So let's see how this does. So you can still get pretty thin lines spraying from about the same distance, but definitely not as thin as what we got with the 0.25 tip, which is only natural when you move up tip size. But you can definitely get a wider pattern, much better for coverage with the 0.38 tip, as you can see right now. So if you're doing base coats, transitions, the 0.38 does a pretty good job. You can still do tight pre-shades depending on, I guess, the size of the model you're painting. But yeah, good atomization, nice and smooth. And again, this is with the 0.38 tip of the Paasche Talon. And I'm, by the way, I'm spraying at about 18 to 20 psi. It's a really good spray pattern on the 0.38. So now let's test out the largest tip size, the 0.6, and let's see how this fan cap performs. But before that, I'd like to show you how we swap out the tip sizes on the Paasche Talon. Okay, so switching tips on the Talon is pretty straightforward. You want to take the handle off, the needle out. I'll clean that later. And disassemble the head, it's the air cap, and for the nozzle you might have to use your spanner, which comes with the set. Just loosen that, and that unscrews with your fingers. Still a bit of paint left in there. Give that a good cleaning later on. And then since these are screw-in type nozzles, I like to use a bit of beeswax around the threads just to help with the seal. Some people like to use plumber's tape, Teflon tape, things like that. But I much prefer using this. I feel like it doesn't affect alignment as much as having, you know, something really solid in between those threads. So just some beeswax, lip balm actually, on those threads will help with keeping an airtight seal between the airbrush body and the nozzle. So if you ever have problems with bubbles in the cup when you press down on the trigger, one of the first things you want to check is a good seal between your nozzle and the airbrush body. So I'm just going to tighten this just a little bit. You don't want to strip the threads on that. Make sure it's nice and secure. And we'll be using the 0.66 air cap. So each tip size has its own air cap. We'll start off with the round, and then later on we'll try the fan cap. So that screws right on. There we go. And then lastly, we'll be sliding in the 0.66 needle. And you can tell which needle is which, by the way, by checking how many notches are engraved on the back end of the needle. So your nozzle and your air cap will also have the same kind of notches, so you don't mix them up. So just slide that right in all the way through until it's seated, and then you want to retighten the needle lug, and that's good to go. So you just put the handle back on and load it up with paint. Okay, so got the airbrush ready, loaded up with same paint. Now with the 0.6 millimeter round tip, and let's see how this sprays. Ooh. Yeah, that's definitely a lot jumpier than the previous two tip sizes. Very difficult to get a thin line with this, but so much easier doing coverage, which is as expected. It's a pretty large tip, 0.66. You probably want to use this with thicker paints, metallics, anything with flakes. If you're doing large projects, things like Shatria binders or Psychozaku fuel tanks, this should make short work of those things. But yeah, you definitely have to get used to the sudden burst of paint. As you can see here, even at just 1820 psi, you have to have good control of that trigger, or you'll end up making a mess. Or probably thicker paint, you wouldn't get this kind of splashing. But yeah, for the purpose, doing coverage, that should be good. Now let's try out the fan cap. Alright, now let's see what we can do with the fan air cap for the 0.66 tip. Now the regular round air cap produces a round spray pattern, but this one actually does something more of an oval. So as you can see, sprays a very wide pattern, very flat, and you can cover a pretty large surface very quickly. I also have a much thicker ratio of paint in here, about 50-50 thinner to paint ratio, and it sprays on just fine. So you can also adjust the prongs to be at the top and bottom here, and that would produce a horizontal pattern if you're spraying up and down. But if you prefer to spray left to right, then this is how you want to set that. Alright, so there you have it, the Paasche Talon TG3F. It's a very versatile set with 3 tip combinations that comes with it. Also offers the fan air cap, which I really like. Few other airbrushes have this option, and for the price you get all of these. So if you're looking for an all-in-one kind of set, then this is definitely something you want to check out. Performance wise, I'd say it's about on par with Badger's offerings. It's a little heavier than Badger's airbrushes, I think, but build quality is about the same, as you can see here with the Renegade Chrome. It's a little beefier. The girth of the body is definitely larger, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable in the hand. Still feels pretty good to hold. It's a little front heavy, especially if you have the fan air cap on. It's a pretty heavy attachment, and with a taller cup. The cup is actually not that big. It might appear to be large on the video or in some photos, but it's actually not that much bigger than other more popular airbrushes, I guess. Trigger action is very nice and smooth, gives good control. Pressing up and down, pressing on the trigger isn't too straining on your finger, and backwards action is really nice as well. It does have the needle limiter, so if you wanted to control how far back you wanted to pull that trigger, then you have this option. And it also has a tension adjust right here, but you want to make sure you be careful not to have this needle limiter screwed all the way in when you're reattaching the handle, because if you do that and this is screwed all the way in, then you run the risk of pushing your needle forwards too far that it cracks your nozzle. So you want to make sure to unscrew this a little bit before screwing the handle back on. So yeah, overall a really good value for the price. I can definitely recommend this. Maybe not as your first airbrush, but if you're looking to upgrade from a generic airbrush or something else, this is definitely a good option. Thanks for watching.